You're listening to the Curiosity Collective podcast.
I'm Arpita.
And I'm Deepika.
I remember walking down the Gulmohar-lined streets of Indiranagar, and as soon as we entered the Daily Dump office, I kind of really liked the vibe of it. Its entrance had this large Yakshi statue that we confused for a tree, actually, because it had a vine twisted about it. And it stood midst this really sweet, wild-looking garden. And strewn all about were Daily Dump's composting products in all forms and sizes, packaged and ready to be on their way across the city.
Yeah, that office is just thrumming with activity. And I was really looking forward to this conversation because it's the first interview that you and I have done together. And also because we have a personal connection to Daily Dump. My sister studied under its founder, and I know that last year you gifted yourself a Daily Dump composter for your birthday.
Yeah, an extension of my ever-growing composting gear. And so we were there to interview Poonam Bir Kasturi, who actually founded Daily Dump in 2006. It's a social enterprise based out of Bangalore, and the idea behind the organization was to find solutions to the escalating problem of garbage that's been affecting all Indian cities. She's a really vibrant, interesting, warm person, and she's done so many things. She's been a founding faculty of the Srishti School of Design. She was also awarded the Social Entrepreneur of the Year in 2016 by the Schwab Foundation and the Smart Cities India Award for Decentralized Waste Management in 2016, amongst so many other awards.
That's a really long list. But after going for beach cleanups in Mumbai and just looking at the sheer volume of waste that cities are generating, I met people at the beach there they were saying that after looking at what they saw, they went home and they were reassessing all the things in their own house because they saw those same things on the beach. And that's the conversation we'd had in our last episode. And so it also felt fitting that for this second conversation to reach out to Daily Dump and visit them, because it's really about looking at how do you find solutions to these big problems. And that's what our Trash Talk series is looking to explore. And Poonam's been a pioneer in that regard and doing so much work in this field.
Hi, I'm Poonam Bir Kasturi. I've trained as an industrial designer. I passed out of National Institute of Design in 1984. And since then, I think my people say that I've had, why am I doing what I'm doing right now? The short answer to that question is that I never planned this, right? It was a series of unfortunate or fortunate circumstances and events that happened that led me here. Having said that, I think that I would not have been doing anything else because I am and I continue to be deeply interested in seeing how design can actually engage with what people call messy problems, larger problems, where you feel, my God, one person, what can that person do?
The question that she asks, what can one person do? It feels really central to this series and what we're saying in terms of what is individual action and how is it significant and what can you do?
Yeah, we've both been studying and working in the development sector for the past decade and more. And it's a question that we found really no simple answer to.
Yeah, and I think that's also what made me curious about her journey and, how she's responding to that question and what is her relationship with waste that's led her here.
Waste has been a part of my life for a long time, it seems, because my first design project in NID was on a landfill site. So I lived on a landfill site for 3 weeks, and it was very interesting at that time. I was trying to say, okay, it was a systems design project. And we were just 1.5 years into NID, and you were very raw, you were very naive, you thought you could change the world, and with all that kind of energy when you're young, no? And it was a great experience. And I think that seems to have stayed with me because I've always been interested in seeing, again, how can design engage with large issues? When I started teaching, that was the time when I learned a lot. And I ended up reading a lot on sustainability, meeting very interesting people, seeing interesting projects. And it was at that time I said, enough talk. I need to do. That's when I started my Daily Dump. At that time, we knew, even today, it's still the same in lots of places where waste is not my job. Waste is dirty. There's a social stigma to waste. If you are educated, you will not touch waste. If you are richer, you will not be bothered about waste. You'll be more bothered about cultural things like museums and art, having a world view. Uh, but you will create waste, and so your relationship with waste is a difficult one.
Both of us have been working with people who lived in and around garbage dumping grounds and survive on it for their livelihood.
Yeah, and even the same one actually, the Anar dumping ground in Mumbai, which is actually one of the oldest dumping grounds in India. And I remember the first time I went there, I thought dumping ground, it's got to be a hole in the ground. But instead, what I found, what I what I saw was this gigantic heap. I mean, it was a plateau actually, and at some point of time, I remember reading this that it was as high as an 18-story building.
Absolutely. I remember my first tour of sorts to the dumping ground. It was by this 14-year-old boy who was showing me around. And exactly as you described, he pointed to it and he said it's a kachre ka pahad, which is what it is. It's a mountain of waste. And then he was showing me the bottom of his feet and, it's been cut by glass because he goes up there in rubber chappals and there's broken syringes and glass bottles and just really harmful substances. And then he was pointing to the fires that start because of the buildup of methane, because of so much of waste. And the air is always toxic there. There's runoffs during the monsoon. And you see kids as young as 7 and 8 going up there to sort and segregate and recycle this waste that they've never been generated.
Yeah, a significant part of recycling in India is still taking place in these spaces. Often it's the poor and the marginalized who are doing this in unstructured and dangerous work conditions. And I think this is the deep tragedy which Poonam is trying to point to, which is so reflective of how caste and class really complicate our relationship with garbage. And I remember thinking of this even when I came across this report by the Boston Consulting Group, which was speaking to the consumption in India. It actually said that consumption currently is being fueled by those in the 5 to 20 lakh per annum income bracket. And yet, like we're speaking, it is the poor who have to deal with the consequences of the waste that's generated from this consumption process. And meanwhile, consumption in cities is growing and it's deeply encouraged. Poonam shared how this has been happening in Bangalore over the years.
I think 2006, we were looking at 2,800 kilos, 1,800 tons to 2,500 tons. Now the figures are 4.5 to 6, some people say. So that's the growth, right, in 13 years. And the density of the city has tripled almost. And the composition of waste is completely changed. So when you look at a dustbin, in volume, the volumes have changed. So the 60% weight of organic waste somewhat remains the same. Yeah, because even if you're not cooking at home, you're buying a lot of Swiggy food and you're buying takein, and you end up, there's a lot of food waste when you eat like that. And people are not aware of it. It's the other component that has become 4 times more. So if that was 25% in weight, that still continues to be about 30% in weight, but the volumes have become much larger because there's a lot more packaging and lots of plastic, lots and lots of plastic, lots of takeaway containers, lots of... everybody's into this packaging, right? It should look nice on the shelf. You should have the unboxing experience or whatever it's called. And so there are layers and layers and layers that hide that damn product. And on one side, it's also about barriers and food safety and security and shelf life. And the fact is that you're traveling so many more miles. The thing that's made on day 1 is being consumed on day 300.
When Poonam was talking about packaging and the unboxing experience and all of that, I immediately thought of Mumbai and, so many grocery stores now, these big grocery stores, have everything from like individual watermelons to bananas to dry coconuts wrapped up in plastic.
Bananas have their own
So do coconuts, so do watermelons. And I'm looking at them wondering why. And it makes you question, like, is there an association of plastic with hygiene and sanitation? And that's why it's used, but you know where it ends up and you know what it's doing. So the two just don't fit together.
And this is the change in the nature of garbage that Poonam is speaking about, which is really, really worrying. Because with organic waste, there's some notion of eventual decay, But plastic bags take more than 400 years to break down, and then you still have the issue of microplastics, right? And I mean, we have found no solution for this problem of dealing with plastics, yet we are generating so much plastic on a daily basis.
When we used to go to a landfill in 2006, a lot of the material was organic. Yeah. And it would bring down the weight of that whole landfill a lot. Now we are finding there are mountains and mountains of plastic. And when we go now, and it's a case I find, and Bangalore is full of these IT things. Now, so when you go into a closed office, an air-conditioned office, there's no natural light. You're working in front of a computer. You have coffee on call. You have cold coffee on call. You have lipstick on call. Whatever you have on call. You literally live in a bubble. You go out. You're on manicured lawns. There's water, sprinklers. All of it is taken care of. You drive through some shitty traffic and you reach home. But again, there you have made enough money, so everything is like closed, right? You're not aware of the amount of mess that is accumulating because of the choices you're making. You're not aware. Even in we go for these these workshops in IT spaces and these big corporate offices. I have actually seen people just drop things into a dustbin like it doesn't matter. And my whole thing is, when is it going to matter?
I've been thinking about this idea of what convenience implies and, just how easy it is to buy and throw things away and not really think about where it's ending up. And, especially when I think about conferences and just like every single conference I've gone to, you'll see those tiny little mineral water bottles at every place. And, 2 sips and it's over and you have to toss it away. And, and add to that plastic cutlery and, plates and single use packaging material for food. And half that stuff you can't even recycle because it's thrown away dirty and it's completely useless.
And Bangalore, like Poonam was just saying, estimated production of garbage per day is 6,000 metric tons, which is huge. And Bangalore tried to undertake a ban on single-use plastics in 2016, yet it is still struggling with the problem. And, it's really difficult to try to contain the use. And implementing the ban has been really difficult.
Well, I've taken my team on a trash trail this Saturday. And when you go to a dry waste collection center, you go to a dump yard, you'll find that very same thing that looks beautiful on a shelf, looks beautiful in an ad, it looks beautiful in the actress's mouth or hip or hand or whatever. That's lying on the floor with all of things. And you don't ever see it like that. I think that or if we can't stop this plastic, I think there should be a mandatory rule that whatever you're selling, you sell it with the picture. It's like the tobacco warning, right? You sell that and you sell it how it looks in a landfill. And I have a feeling people will stop buying so much because they have to see it at its end. That same thing. It can't be a anonymous bottle. That doesn't work. It has to have the same brand. It has to have that same color. It has to have the same size. And it should be there at the landfill. I suspect then people will start saying, my God, doesn't look so cool after all, does it?
So it is this problem of invisibility of our consumption, of the fact that, we lose sight of the product beyond our immediate use, that Poonam was somehow trying to address through her prototype of the home composter. Basically trying to reduce the distance between the waste and the individual so that you can again begin to see, touch, feel, and engage with outcomes of your consumption.
Yeah, I have a really close friend who works in advertising and she always jokes and says, I'm off to sell people things that they don't need. And it is really that, right? You don't see the consequence of your choices and where that's ending up because you only see it in its beautifully packaged form in the beginning. And I think that's also why it's so easy to pretend because you don't look at it at that end of the spectrum. And that's what Daily Dump is actually trying to do when it's bringing about that change in mindset and how you look at your waste.
Yeah, so Daily Dump, people often tell us that we are a waste management company. But we like to think of ourselves as a mindset changing company. We believe we've designed a set of products and services and awareness material. This allows everybody to participate in engaging with our natural resources. which we feel is a very important part of urban life. And the more we get people to engage with nature and the way nature works for us, we feel we'll have more sustainable cities. We'll have more well-being. We'll have more justice. We will have more time to play, and of course, we'll have good health because everything will be clean. It won't be polluted. I mean, that's the ideal sense of where we'd like to think the daily dump is working for. So it's at a more practical end. It's a set of products and services which you can use, and because you use them, you are either reducing the waste that you send to landfill. With when you use them, you are reducing your plastic that you use every day. With using them or reading stories from them, you are becoming aware of some issue that was not presented to you before in this way. So that's the practical side. On the other, more abstract side, we like to believe that this is an experiment, and we hope that will inspire other people to do the same things in their lives.
So it's because of her background in design that Poonam's approach is that of design thinking. And we decided to ask Poonam to explain it a little further and how she's applied it in the case of waste management.
At the core, design thinking is about how much you can listen. And listen to what really is there instead of all your biases kicking in. And how much of homework you do to find out how many people have walked down that path before. I call my composter prototype. It was a prototype. I put it out there in the world, and the world reacted to it, and it took it to its own form. It reacted to it. It became like there was an interplay. And from that, a new way of doing the same old thing emerged. So it's like you're doing things. You don't stop doing things. But can you do something differently? Design allows you to create a prototype to be able to get people to think about it, because otherwise you can't imagine, right? You can't even imagine. Like when I used to tell people we can do this at home, this is what a composter is. Everybody said, what nonsense is this? It's not going to work. But when you put something out there, and then people have something tangible to talk about, touch, feel, react to, criticize, or like, either way, doesn't matter. That's what design thinking is.
So it's basically a creative problem-solving tool which puts the focus then on the human need behind the creation of any product.
It was this approach that resulted in their the first and most iconic product, the Kamba.
Yeah, and it really is iconic because, Poonam was saying it's been showcased at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. And, I know so many people who don't know the company but are actually really familiar with the Kamba because Poonam was saying they've been tracking and they've been able to map 80 clones, lookalikes across the world. And I think one of them, she said, is in Islamabad, which calls itself Dump Daily.
Oh, really original.
Yeah, I love that. And, she was joking how it's now taken on a life of its own and, so much so that it becomes its own person. And she was explaining then what the Kamba actually is and what it looks like.
So the Kamba is India's first home composter made by potter communities. It's a set of, it's basically somebody said it looks like a tiffin dabba, three-part tiffin box, right? Indian tiffin box. It's a set of three units, each independent. But the first and second unit, they all sit on top of each other. The first and second unit, they keep interchanging. And the last unit is the maturation chamber. You start by putting your organic waste and our special powder. The powder ensures that there's no foul odor and you have no hassle of shifting and turning and spending time because everybody's very busy these days. So all you do is you dump your waste and you dump the powder over it every day. So you do that daily, and then nature takes over, the microorganisms kick up, and the environment is that because the terracotta is ideal for absorbing the leachate, decomposition is an exothermic reaction. It generates heat, it releases water and carbon dioxide. And all this happens within this terracotta container in a beautiful way. And you don't have any foul odor, and you keep dumping. And after the first unit is full, you interchange it in the center. The center goes on top. You do the same thing. After that is full, you take the stuff that was in unit A, you empty it into C, which is your maturation chamber, and you take it up. So A and B keep interchanging. When C fills up, it's ready, and you take it out and harvest it. People say, oh God, I don't have a garden. I'm not a what will I do with it, man? It's such a That's the first thing. When you get that material, you see what was smelly, what was rotten, you thought it was waste, has become this wonderful, sweet smelling thing. So that's a first, thing that hits you saying, my God, happens. And then you take it to a tree, a nearby tree, and drop it and say hello to the tree. That will then become your second point of reconnection with nature. That's what we say.
As Poonam was talking, I was reminded of these lines by the poet Mary Oliver. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things.
That's one of my favorite poems too, but do explain how you were reminded, what reminded you of it?
I think when she says, family of things, it points again to, how we all belong to the planet in so many ways. And there's that recognition that our needs are just one amongst so many other species. That wider sense of a network and interconnection that it speaks to.
Yeah, of course, it's very hard to convert even now because people like the idea, but they're very scared to put it as a daily practice. They think it'll take too much time, it'll definitely smell, you definitely get bugs. And you do get one bug which is quite unique. And if you're not used to it, and urban dwellers are not used to it, I remember when I started experimenting with composting, they were all in my house under the carpet, inside my printer, coming out of the water faucet. And my family just broke out. They said, why the hell are you doing this? And it's the same thing. I've had customers face the same thing. And that's what scares people. That one story scares people. And if you can get past that, right, then it's great. It's called the black soldier fly maggot. Yeah, and the black soldier fly maggot, in fact, we have a saying in Daily Ram, we don't bow to anybody but the black soldier fly maggot. It's a very wily, very happy, very beautiful creature which we know nothing about, in the sense, in our everyday lives. But when you see it, it's a creepy thing. And lots of them, yeah? But it can make magic. And the interesting thing, that's just the pupa stage. The fly that comes out is a very good fly. It has no mouth parts. It doesn't eat any food. It does not carry any disease. Unlike the housefly, which is a rotten fly. So I didn't know all these things. It was one of those things that you ask yourself, why didn't people teach us when I was in kindergarten? And that's what really bothers me. We're not taught the magic of air, water, soil. We don't think it's mysterious. We don't think it's enjoyable. We don't think it's as cool as the phone or the laptop.
This was the part of the conversation where you really came alive because, of course, she mentions a soldier fly.
Yeah, beaming like a strobe light at Poonam. Yeah, because, her experience mirrors mine in so many ways. I remember even I went down the same path of feeling extreme revulsion in the beginning when I first spotted the maggots in the composting bin. But then soon as I understood their, part in the cycle, even I shifted to that feeling of reverence and fondness for them. I mean, who thought I was going to have a favorite fly, And like Poonam said, I felt the gap in my education. I wondered why I didn't know about this.
Yeah, and that's why you've been writing that endless essay on the soldier fly that you only have been talking about.
Soldier flies are really significant, I mean, especially now we're hearing of these cases where they're actually being imported by temperate zone countries and farmed for solving this problem. And I think that needs to be written about.
Yes, write, but also share. But with Poonam also, I think that assessment that our concrete classrooms actually don't teach us very much, in so much so that they deny that deeper connection with what's outside in the rest of the world. And I think when Daily Dump began with their home composters, they went from that place to then say, okay, how do you look at community composting? What does that look like? And now it's branching into working to build curriculum for schools on various subjects. So, basically bring back nature into our everyday lives.
If you remember, we saw many of those teaching aids that they use in these workshops. It was in their lovely little shop. And they showed how many of them function in terms of, rethinking our place in the world, examining our tricky relationship with material things, and many such things. And they were all an extension of their design thinking methods to understand circular economy better.
The circular economy is basically, okay, nature has nothing is waste in nature, right? So to that extent, it's circular. But I think the far more powerful thing is that it's also very interconnected. So while you may not see a completely linear circle moving around, it might move through something else to close the loop, which may not be visible. And I think that is where nature really shines. Because in the process of, if you become only circular, what you'll do is you'll only see that one material flow. Whereas nature teaches us that it's also interdependency, it's also many interconnections.
Yeah, because all too easily we like to reduce the idea of circular economy into the very simplistic notion of a circle. But like Poonam is saying here, it is much, much more complex. The relationships are multi-layered and there are just so many interconnections. In many ways, it's more like a complex web.
Absolutely. And I think it'll be interesting to see how Daily Dump grows with these ideas, and our conversation with Poonam also from the beginning was very much geared towards problem solving and doing, and her energy is focused in that direction. But there was the other side to the conversation also, and we both were quite affected by it because everything is not that rosy.
Yeah, I mean, you're speaking to the bit where what she referred to as the dark side of the conversation. Yeah. Basically, she was reflecting on how even though they've been working in the sector of waste management for over a decade, it seems like they're watching the problem grow instead of getting resolved. And, there's an urgency to the way Poonam speaks about all of this, which sometimes seems really scary and overwhelming. Most of us are trying to do our best. We live these really busy, scheduled lives where it seems like we've hardly any space to think or breathe. But I think it's important to consider the fact that the urgency comes from her vast experience and time in the field, having watched and tried to work on this issue for such a long time.
What she's saying also, it's pointing to the fact that when you're watching from the outside, something always seems more scary than when you're in it and involved in it. And I think that distance creates fear. But the moment action comes into play, and it can be any action, whether you're segregating or composting, which literally is putting waste into a bin and turning it. Once you start doing that fear dissipates because you're taking those actions, and then it becomes possible also to live with awareness and imagine change and imagine what that can look like.
I don't think you have a choice. You have to participate. I mean, why would you live otherwise? I feel that's the fundamental thing. If you've not figured out life and if you say, no, I won't participate, I will just, watch. Okay, you watch, but you watch with awareness and then participation will become normal. Yeah, if I think anybody is on the thing of, okay, I want to start, but I don't know how, you have to say, the first thing you have to do is saying, I will start. And then forget about the how. I will start. Change that. I want to start, but don't know how. Change that internal dialogue to I will start today. Carry your own bag, carry your own bottle of water, carry your own cutlery, carry your own cloth napkin. All those like you can Google and you'll find today. Fundamentally, that you do, and after that you've done, you'll say, okay, what else? At that point, I think then you should really see how can you influence your friends, your community, your local school, your and for that, you have to go out there and actually breathe the dirty air, and you have to live in that space, and you have to, you really have to go into the dirty work, the leg work. That I think is also very important if that person is interested in doing that. But that also I find, luckily in a city like Bangalore, lots of people are getting involved. I think people are slowly understanding that what are we doing, no? There seems to be a all over the world kind of synchronous kind of feeling. It's like a bud, it's slightly opening.
If you'd like to get started on your composting journey, visit www.dailydump.org to learn more about composting at home. Or visit our website www.thecuriositycollective.org for a list of resources and actions that you can start taking today. In our next conversation, we'll be talking to two people, one in Gurgaon and the other in Bangalore, who both began composting at home and have now taken it to scale and brought their entire community of over 300 households on board. Listen in to hear how they did it. This episode has been made with the support of Srinidhi Raghavan and produced by the Bangalore Recording Company.